The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
It's a shame. It's a horrible thing. Horrible that things like this take place.
The latest update after a gunman opened fire on Florida State University's campus. What we know about the dead, the suspect, and his ties to law enforcement, according to authorities. And gaining international attention, how White House officials are building their case against Kilmar Abrego Garcia and why critics say their timing defies the law. Plus, millions at risk for severe thunderstorms. The Heartland states bracing for extreme wind, rain, and even hail. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we begin with breaking news tonight. 2 people are dead and 6 others are injured after a shooting at Florida State University. The suspected gunman is identified as 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner. His mother, according to authorities, is a Leon County Sheriff's deputy. Authorities say the suspect used her service weapon in the attack. They also say he was part of the Sheriff's Office Youth Advisory Council. Eichner is a current FSU student. We are told authorities say he acted alone. He was also hospitalized after being shot by responding officers. Authorities say the 2 deceased victims were not FSU students. No other information about the victims was released, but authorities also didn't reveal a possible motive. President Trump said he's been briefed.
Fully briefed as to where we are right now. It's a shame. It's a horrible thing. Horrible that things like this take place. And we'll have more to say about it later.
All FSU events have been canceled through Friday. Officials say the campus student union building is an active crime scene. Of course, we will continue to follow this story throughout the night, both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. A judge's order for the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia still stands after an appeals court declined to revoke it today. The administration could try to get emergency relief from the Supreme Court. It's been more than a month since the undocumented migrant was mistakenly sent to a supermax prison in El Salvador, and administration officials appear to be building their case against him. The problem, according to critics, they say they ignore the law and Constitution by denying him due process.
The Trump administration now doubling down with a deep dive into the life and criminal history of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia.
We got rid of a dangerous person.
The Justice Department releasing these 2019 documents from Prince George's County, Maryland police that they say tie him to the criminal gang MS-13, based on those he was questioned with and the clothing he was wearing.
He was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money covering the ears, mouth, and eyes of presidents on various currency denominations. This is a known MS-13 gang symbol of hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil.
Another batch of court records show his wife sought a domestic violence restraining order against him, claiming he punched and scratched her and ripped off her shirt.
My husband Kilmar was abducted.
Jennifer Vasquez Sura now says that 2021 order was filed following a previous abusive relationship and that she and her husband have worked through their marital issues. Last week, the Supreme Court sided with a judge and said the Trump administration must facilitate his return and comply with its obligation to provide Abrego Garcia with due process of law, which critics say President Trump has admitted to ignoring.
I've heard many things about him, and we'll have to find out what the truth is.
Mr. Garcia must be brought back to the United States. If they want to charge him with a crime when he comes back, present the evidence. Thus far, though, they have not presented the evidence. They have not charged him with a crime.
While both supporters of Abrego Garcia and the Trump Justice Department have claimed a win under the Supreme Court's order, legal experts believe the vague nature of it has raised too many questions that the need for clarity is imminent.
I think we're on a fast track back to the Supreme Court. I'm not sure they wanted this case again, but I think they're going to get it.
Absent a law from Congress, the parameters of immigration policy now being hashed out in the courts. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
Meanwhile, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen says he was denied entry to the prison holding Kilmar Abrego Garcia after traveling to El Salvador. You see him right there. This happened yesterday to push for the man's release. Van Hollen planned to check on Abrego Garcia's health and well-being. He says he was stopped by soldiers at a checkpoint near the prison. And it is unclear what is next for the Trump administration after a federal judge warned of a possible contempt prosecution over deportation flights. The judge is giving the White House a chance to remedy the situation before it moves forward, meaning most likely retaking custody of the deportees. If that doesn't happen, the White House says it would appeal a contempt prosecution. The road after that is uncharted territory. The Supreme Court will hear arguments over President Trump's effort to restrict birthright citizenship next month. Trump claims guaranteeing citizenship to anyone born in the U.S. is unconstitutional, arguing illegal immigrants have gamed the system to attain citizenship for their children. The 14th Amendment guarantees citizenship to anyone born or naturalized in the U.S. The Trump administration continues turning up the heat on Harvard University, now threatening to revoke the school's ability to host international students. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joins us with more from Washington.
Foreign students now caught in the middle of the tug of war between the White House and Harvard, neither side showing any signs of backing down.
The Trump administration is overdoing it and being extreme on the one hand, and Harvard is overdoing it and being extreme on the other hand. Both sides are capitulating to the extremes in their constituency.
The Department of Homeland Security demanding the records of Harvard's international students known to have participated in illegal or violent activities. A letter sent from DHS Secretary Kristi Noem accuses Harvard of creating a hostile learning environment for Jewish students due to Harvard's failure to condemn anti-Semitism. If Harvard doesn't hand over the documents, the school risks losing its certification to admit foreign students.
Let's ask the question, would you apply the same standard if the victims were not Jews, but instead were blacks who were being harassed by masked Ku Klux Klanners? And unless you apply that same standard, don't come to me and talk about freedom of speech and academic freedom. Those are phony arguments.
On Monday, the White House froze $2.2 billion in federal funding to Harvard after the school refused to comply with a list of requests by the administration reportedly aimed at curbing rising anti-Semitism on campus. On Wednesday, the administration reportedly asked the IRS to revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status. Harvard putting up a list of what's at risk on their website with the loss of federal support, including cutting-edge medical research. Former Harvard President Larry Summers says Harvard has a right to its rigorous response.
This is a part of a broad and sweeping effort to suppress institutions that challenge the presidential administration.
President Trump taking to Truth Social, calling Harvard a joke. The lawyers Harvard hired for this fight with the White House both have previous ties to the Trump administration, which could be seen as a sign Harvard is hoping to find a compromise.
What do legal experts, Kayla, you spoke with, what do they say would happen should this go to court?
Well, Dee, they say Harvard has a great incentive to settle because if this does go to court, Harvard will likely lose. They're not legally entitled to these funds, and it's money Harvard does heavily rely on for critical research. Another hurdle for Harvard, if it files a lawsuit in the federal judicial system, it could easily result in judges having conflicts of interest because of their connection with the university. For example, 4 of the 9 Supreme Court justices are Harvard grads. Dee.
Kayla Gaskins reporting tonight from the Capitol. Thank you. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling for an investigation into the arson attack at the Pennsylvania governor's mansion as a possible anti-Semitic hate crime. Search warrants revealed that the suspect, Cody Balmer, was driven in part by his views on the war in Gaza, according to authorities, and perceived unfairness towards Palestinians. Balmer is being held without bail on charges including attempted murder and terrorism. Resentencing for Eric and Lyle Menendez, convicted of murdering their parents decades ago, has been delayed again. A judge ruled today. The brothers say they acted in self-defense after years of sexual abuse by their father. Prosecutors argue they did it for a multi-million-dollar inheritance. The new hearing is scheduled for May 9th. Accused United Healthcare CEO killer Luigi Mangione will appear in federal court tomorrow. He's currently awaiting trial on federal and state murder charges. He'll be able to enter a plea for the federal charges once prosecutors indict him. He's already pleaded not guilty to 11 charges in New York. Right now, 11 million people are at risk for severe thunderstorms. As you take a look at the very active radar behind me, these thunderstorms could lead to very large 3-inch hail, wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour, and tornadoes. The greatest threat that we are tracking extends from eastern Nebraska into western and central Iowa, including cities like Omaha and Des Moines. The storm threat is expected to weaken, though, in a few hours. Over 8 million people are under red flag warnings. You see it right there in the southwest and central U.S. Dangerously strong winds and dry air are increasing the threat of rapidly spreading fires. Firefighters are working to contain 3 major wildfires that are now burning in North Carolina, fueled by the current conditions as well as debris from the remnants of Hurricane Helene.
The weather, it's warm and it's dry. The leaves are starting to bloom, and so that's creating a little bit more fuel. I mean, right there you can see a downed tree and a little bit of a landslide. So anything that's dead and downed obviously is dried out and easier to catch on fire.
The Coast Guard is searching for 3 people who were aboard a boat and didn't return when expected. Officials say their boat was found today. You see it right there without the 3 people. They left Washington State, we understand, yesterday morning, and they were supposed to get back last night. The Coast Guard is telling people sailing in that area to be on the lookout and report any signs of distress. And of course, anyone with information should call the Coast Guard Command Center. A school choice bill is now closer to becoming law in Texas. In a historic vote after hours of debate, the Texas House gave initial approval to legislation that would allocate taxpayer money towards private education. Some Democrats are concerned.
A scam that will bankrupt our public schools in the years to come.
But it is a win for Governor Greg Abbott, who says he'll quickly sign it into law. In North Carolina, a school book ban bill is moving forward. The state house passed legislation that gives parents a bigger say about which books are allowed in the state's public and charter schools. This bill now heads to the North Carolina Senate. Book bans have reached record highs over the past 5 years, with several states passing legislation. Coming up on the National News Desk, new optimism from the Oval Office about a trade deal with Europe, what the president's meeting with Italy's prime minister could mean for tariffs. And we're a year out from the midterms, how the Democratic Party is scrambling to find a new identity as criticism mounts. Then later, the violent response from a group of teens at a movie theater when someone asked them to be quiet. We'll be right back. President Trump hosting Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni at the White House today, saying he's 100% sure his administration can make a trade deal with the European Union by the end of his 90-day pause on the 20% tariffs he had imposed on its member nations. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has the latest from Washington.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni may be the only leader in Europe who can break the ice between President Trump and the European Union, as transatlantic trade has been destabilized by the president's tariffs.
We have a very good relationship together.
Meloni shares Trump's conservative populist views, has even been called the Trump whisperer. The president said this when asked about the odds of not reaching a deal with the EU by his self-imposed 90-day deadline.
Oh, there'll be a trade deal, 100%.
There's a lot on the line for Italy, whose main exports to the U.S. include fashion, machinery, and pharmaceuticals, and for the entire European Union.
I think the best way is that we simply speak frankly about the needs that every one of us has and find ourselves in the middle.
If talks with the Trump administration fail, the EU is prepared to impose 25% tariffs on more than $20 billion worth of American products like toilet paper, makeup, and tobacco. On Wednesday, the president spoke by phone with the president of Mexico and met in person with the Japanese delegation, saying they made big progress.
I'd encourage everyone to come fast and come with a great deal.
Dozens of countries are looking to negotiate with the White House in order to get tariffs lowered, but some world leaders are using this moment of uncertainty with the U.S. to strengthen their ties with China. And President Trump is paying attention.
Nobody can compete with us, nobody.
The U.S. and China, which each have triple-digit tariffs on each other's goods, are in a standoff.
China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them.
But the stakes are high for President Trump, whose tariff policies 3 months into his second term are, according to Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, expected to cause Americans economic pain.
And President Trump claims Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will be out of a job if he wills it. The president saying today he has never been very fond of Powell, who he appointed in 2017. Trump also wrote on Truth Social that Powell is always too late and wrong. This comes after Powell commented on Trump's tariffs yesterday.
The level of tariff increases announced so far is significantly larger than anticipated, and the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth.
Powell says he would not step down if Trump asked him. He also says Trump lacks the power to fire him, but that doesn't mean Trump wouldn't test that if he can. A federal judge hears arguments today over President Trump's executive order on elections, a sweeping overhaul of federal election processes. It requires proof of citizenship to register, all mail ballots to be received by Election Day, and states to share voter lists, among other things. Voting rights groups argue the order is illegal because Trump doesn't have power over the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. Trump calls the measures common sense protections.
It was a civic duty because I found that people on my side of the street, you know, I'm a Democrat. I was a Democrat in Kentucky, so I get it. When I saw people on my side of the street not telling the truth, I thought that was time to...
George Clooney sitting down exclusively with CNN's Jake Tapper, discussing why he asked former President Biden to step aside from his re-election bid. We are now more than 1 year out from what could be historic midterms. Democrats now debating themselves about which direction the party needs to go to rebuild itself and win. Joe Biden re-entered the spotlight with a big speech targeting some Trump administration initiatives, and tonight the criticism is piling up, some of it from within his own party. Time magazine calling it Joe Biden launches a comeback no one is asking for, while the Daily Beast headline reads, Democrats slam Biden's special level of chutzpah for making a comeback speech. James Carville, most famously known for running Bill Clinton's successful campaign, saying this.
The only thing I'd ask is just don't use the word Democratic in any title that you have. Because most Democrats that I know that are running for office don't want you your name. Don't want you to be part of the deal.
Carville arguing progressive Democrats focused on identity politics, adding progressives can come up with your own name. Those messages aren't stopping progressive all-stars like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from bringing in big crowds across the nation. In fact, AOC raised $9.6 million in the first quarter of this year. Fundraising, of course, a great sign, but as you look right here, even the Atlantic is asking one critical question. Can you really fight populism with populism? Google has illegally built a monopoly over online advertising, according to a federal judge. This ruling could reshape the multi-trillion-dollar company and its power over the internet. The judge found that Google locks publishers into using a certain system that matches websites with advertisers. Google has argued its tech helps publishers and small businesses. Lines are getting longer at DMVs as the deadline to get a real ID gets closer. Today, they do want anyone flying domestically to get a real ID by May 7th, although other forms of ID like passports will still be accepted. Real IDs have a star in the top corner on the left or right side, depending on the state. Making an appointment to get one is recommended to avoid extra wait time. Coming up next here, the frustration that's growing after a repeat offender was arrested again in Washington. We'll explain right after this. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start with a mother shot and killed in Ohio.
She was like the whole grandma to all the kids in the neighborhood. I mean, she looked out for everybody.
Neighbors in Wilmington's Northland Court Apartments are in shock as police investigate the murder of 55-year-old Kelly Blazer. Police say Kyler Witt called 911 and told dispatchers he shot and killed his mom.
I live diagonal from her. She's upstairs, and we heard the boom, and we weren't sure what it was, but we ended up finding out it was a gunshot later.
Neighbors say they often saw Witt in the complex.
He would walk. Hi, Monsieur. I never had any, either of them, any bad confrontation, bad vibe, whatever it was.
Just sorry for the family. They're all great people, and she was so great too. And stuff like this happens. It scares everybody, but we're all a tight-knit family here, and we'll get by.
But this whole area of the parking lot here was just filled with cop cars.
Mayhem at the movies, catching the attention of nearby neighbor Brad Champion.
So we were about to go to the movies last night, and my fiance wanted to stay home, so I'm kind of glad that she did.
Police swarmed the Apple Cinemas at the Warwick Mall just before midnight, saying disruptive behavior during the Minecraft movie devolved into a slashing in the parking lot. Police say 4 boys, ages 14 to 16, attacked a group of adults with knives after being told to keep quiet.
I mean, it's terrible. I mean, a lot of these
teenagers, maybe they need to be accompanied by an adult. I mean, I don't even understand why they would do something like that. It's pretty awful.
Police say the teens are from the Providence area, all facing felony charges, including assault. We're told the victims got medical attention and will be okay.
It'd be nice if all the families can just enjoy it and not have to worry about things like that.
Just follow the golden rule. Respect everyone, do what's right, and be courteous, calm, and polite.
Branson Albert is back in custody after months on the run for a staggering list of charges alleging he repeatedly steals cars from travelers at the SeaTac airport.
Count 3, theft of a motor vehicle. Count 4, theft of a firearm.
When he's not in secure detention, there seems to be repeat offenses.
The allegation is it's arrest, release, repeat. How does your office deal with that?
To ask for him to be in court, to say this is, and for him to be held.
Prosecutors asked for a bail of over $200,000, and Judge David Keenan agreed to it. Albert had 7 warrants on 8 pending felony cases in King County for car theft, drugs, identity theft, and gun charges.
Prosecutors are as frustrated as the public is when you see an arrest and release and then a reoffense. That shouldn't happen to the victims, and it shouldn't happen to taxpayers. It's so frustrating when you come back from a vacation, you had a great time, and then your car's broken into. What a violating feeling.
Coming up, signs of life on a distant planet, the technology used, and the promising findings that led to the discovery. Scientists have found the strongest signs of past or present life on a distant planet. Using the James Webb Telescope, a team of astronomers were able to detect chemical fingerprints within the atmosphere of a remote planet. It's located within the habitable zone of its star. That just means that the world is the right temperature to host water. However, scientists are still skeptical and are going to keep on testing the results. We'll keep you posted. That's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening as we cover the latest on the Florida State University shooting. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight at 10.